All right, everybody, we're back as promised with our coverage of the 10K Modern Showdown in Chicagoland, Illinois, the final showdown weekend of season 2 of the NRG series. And of course, this is our last event open to the public, and then we will have our December 2024 showdown, which these players have a final opportunity to qualify for. So speaking of, as before we jump into the semifinals match for you, let's go ahead and bring up what these players are playing for. I've talked about it quite a bit on the line for these players. You can see there to first place goes $2,400. The trophy, DreamHack Invitation, I believe, no longer DreamHack, now just the RC,
Yeah.
and 30 points. And of course, the invite to the 2024 championship, last opportunity to do it. Second place doesn't get all that, no trophy, no invite to the championship, but do still get the RC invite, 25 points, $1,200 for your trouble. And then everybody here has locked up at least $800 and 20 points just by being in the top 4. You can see the breakdown for every result past that. So these players have already won quite a bit of cash, quite a bit more still to play for. Can kind of triple your money by making it to the finals. So a lot on the line. And for people like Connor, there's also points considerations to think about as well. So we're going to be watching a little bit of that. Before we get to Connor, let's get down to John Wagner on Amulet Titan versus Jake Coenen on Dimir Unearth. I think this is the kind of eye-tied deck, if you will. The little abhorrent Oculus kind of, not really a combo deck, but more of just what has replaced the Murktide Regent deck and supports Psychic Frog in a modern context. So kind of a different matchup look than what we've seen really across the board in Modern so far. A lot of mono blue decks versus energy and things like that, little Flage decks and stuff like. No Flages here.
Yeah, this Dimir Unearth deck is fascinating. Like, this is what they wanted Unearth to be when they printed it into Modern. And, people kind of take it for granted maybe, but like Unearth was printed into Modern a long time ago now, right? Like, it was in Modern Horizons 1 and basically didn't really do anything. Occasionally, like I remember trying to brew with it with Lightning Skelemental, things like that. But yeah. Psychic Frog has turned entire new archetypes out into the wild because of what it can do. It's so powerful at being the discard outlet that these decks kind of needed. It's like Faithless Looting turbos charged, and it digs your graveyard, digs you into your deck, except in this case, instead of looting, you're just drawing. And basically you see decks go from there. It's starting with Psychic Frog. And this version of that, a Dimir Unearth deck, is really cool, picking up the new standard hotness, Abhorrent Oculus, the massive 5/5 for 3 mana that you have to exile 6 cards from your graveyard to cast, but every turn it manifests Shred on your opponent's turn. So you just immediately end up with 7 power in play if you can get it. And that's where Psychic Frog comes in. You can pitch it, as you see. Jake has Psychic Frog on turn 2.
Yeah, it's got one.
Imagine next turn he just pitches Abhorrent Oculus, pays 1 mana with Unearth to try to reanimate it. By the way, you still have Counterspell mana open at that point to protect it. A lot of ways that this deck can play to play proactively, while, by the way, also playing Counterspells and Forces and Fatal Pushes and Sink into Stupors and all of that, right? So, yeah. And by the way, Murktide at the top. So yeah, really a very
classic Magic.
Yeah, like it's built around Psychic Frog from the ground up. And honestly, it's kind of a new archetype, right? If you look at it that way. I love seeing the Unearth make an appearance with this really high upside play. Now, obviously, on the other side, I'll let you take over for this this very fast One Ring.
The Amulet deck, obviously it's more of a classic look now, featuring the Aftermath Analyst. Now, this is actually real quick. This is a big turn here for Jake because he actually has 2 main deck copies of Harbinger of the Seas. A lot of Blood Moons going around. Harbinger of the Seas, that the version of that one, but actually harder to answer because you can't really besiege you who endures that one. So if he has a copy of Harbinger of the Seas, that could be really big here. So I just want to highlight that real quick. But yeah, Amulet, I mean, I'll say a classic deck in Modern. I remember the genesis of that deck and a lot of its evolutions. It is Harbinger of the Seas. I mean, these players know the matchup, so I mean, mulling to a hand that has that, a very good idea. And right away, the Urza Saga goes to the graveyard because of layers and stuff.
Yeah,
I actually don't really know the rule specifics there. I just know Blood Moon effects kill Urza Saga.
It's something, it's something about sagas and not having chat. I don't really know. All I know is when I play my 1-drop Merfolk and turn it into an island, it goes away.
Yeah, I wave my hands and say layers, and usually I think that takes
care. Exactly. But I mean, gosh, look how good Harbinger was here, right? You've got the basic swamp Jake does that he fetched for. So was able to protect his own mana and just really mess up John's game plan here. Aftermath Analyst is a start, I guess.
Blocks, that's something.
Sure, yeah.
But still saying Amulet. Oh, we get to deploy Lotus Field. No sack though. That's kind of nice. Yeah, I mean, this is a good call out, right?
Yeah.
Primeval Titan has seen a lot of iterations in Modern in various kinds of decks. Sometimes it's Scape Shift, sometimes it's Amulet of Vigor. This is really the first one I've seen both Amulet of Vigor and Scape Shift in the same deck, and this is kind of the latest iteration of Primeval Titan and what it can do in Modern. And I have to say I like it a lot. This is a nice pivot in the form of the Aftermath Analyst kind of combo thing going on, but it doesn't take up too many slots. And Amulet already had a lot of slots dedicated to some weird stuff anyway, like tutor targets and things of that nature. But now, unfortunately, kind of in the heads up here, facing down main deck Harbinger of the Seas on turn 3 is brutal. Not at all what John Wagner really wanted to see. But I don't know, maybe there's a way out of it. Let's take a quick look and see what removals was. We have Otawara. Checking. Okay, we have one copy of Otawara.
Well, that's something.
I think that might be the end of the list.
Yeah, that's not a lot.
We have an expedition map right in play, so we can find it. That gives you one turn window. So you can see John doing a good job here, kind of sneakily building mana with the Lotus, the Lotus Field. We have Gruul Turf already in play. We actually already have 6 mana. Really kind of, we have the One Ring to kind of build up our cards to really be able to go once we do find the Otawara. But the question is, do we have time to do it all? The frog is getting big.
A long way away here because and the Abhorrent Oculus actually just hitting play hard cast with 6 cards in the graveyard thanks to, you heard it, Frog. It's getting late pretty early if you're John.
And here comes a little Manifest Dread. That happens on each opponent's upkeep. So I'm going to go ahead and Manifest Dread. Fills the graveyard for future eyeballs too.
Chat is telling us that Otawara might actually be residing in hand here for John.
Is that? That still might not be enough. We're going to take some damage here from the One Ring.
7, 9.
Is Frog 4, just enough?
13.
Frog plus eyeball, or not Frog? Yeah. Is Frog plus eyeball just too much?
Yeah, Jake has lethal.
I see 9, 10, 11. Yeah, that's got to be lethal. 12, 13, 14. Yeah, we have Xaxes, right?
Well, there's a ring too. So.
Yeah, sure. There's also the One Ring. So a second copy of the One Ring needs to be involved. Oh, this is brutal.
Yeah, it's pretty rough here for John. I think it involves curving One Ring into that Otawara to survive a little. It's pretty ugly here. I'll say that. So probably correct to go ahead and draw 3 here.
Yeah, find some blockers maybe. Like if you can find like a grazer, maybe that allows you to get some more things start. I don't know. This is tough.
Look at Abhorrent Oculus go though. Like we talked about how you can cheat it into play by discarding it to Psychic Frog. Well, it turns out you can also discard other cards to Psychic Frog and cast Abhorrent Oculus.
Yeah, we're gonna pack it in. Yeah, impressive. Force engagement up under the Manifest Dread there. But yeah, no, exactly what you just said. The card works cheating it in. The card works, if you're willing to do a little bit of work. It also just works face up. If you just cast it, just whatever, it's fine. 3 mana, 5/5, exile some stuff that you were pitching to the Frog anyway to keep the pressure going, and that is enough to get game number 1 done. Now, of course, entirely off the back of that Harbinger of the Seas. That One Ring very clearly, I think, would have run away with that game without it. But either way, the Eye Tide, the Dimir Unearth, whatever you want to call it, that deck's going to win game number 1. So let's take a quick look again at John Wagner and his take on Amulet Titan and what he might have in the sideboard for some Harbinger of the Seas. So we have 2 copies of Dismember, 2 copies of Fire Spout, 2 Mystical Dispute, a Bajuka Bog, a Besaja Who Endures, a Radiant Fountain, a Valakut the Molten Pinnacle, a Disruptor Flute, a Spelunking, a Force of Vigor, a Dryad of the Elysian Grove, and a Colossal Sky Turtle. What do you like here? I see a lot of things that answer Harbinger of the Seas in some way.
Well, this is what is really going to be a fascinating sideboarding matchup here, right? Because we talk about this Dimir deck and how it basically is just a bunch of good Dimir cards kind of loosely based around Frog, but they can go different directions here. That deck can be proactive with its aggressive game plan, or it can be reactive and boarding in a bunch of removal. And if it's boarding in a bunch of removal, then as the Amulet player in Disruption, you're going to be wanting to look for your cards that help you with that, right? So that's where we start talking about, do you want to play a long game? Do you want to try with Bajuka Bogs? Like, do you want to go a different direction and try to disrupt them with flutes? Like, I think the disputes are probably pretty easy here. So you actually just, have your 1 mana answer to the turn 3 Frog. To the turn 3 Harbinger. So I think that's probably where we start. Past that, I'd say it's pretty open, right? You even might do you want Dismember for
I
for
do.
their big creatures, right? Like it just
Eyeballs a
depends what
5/5. That's
angle.
what I got.
Yeah, like it just depends what angle you want to play the game on, right?
Sure.
If you want to put reactive cards like Dismember into your deck in case they have the Oculus, versus do I just want to try to be the beatdown? Do I just want to try to combo them as fast as possible? That's the decision process John is going through right now.
Well, he's got a lot to think about. Let's take a quick look over at Jake and what he's working with his Demir deck. And have to imagine it's quite a bit. Take a quick look here at the deck list and the sideboard. So we got in the sideboard, we got 4 consigned to memory. Can't be too surprised about that. 3 copies of Thoughtseize, 2 Graveyard Trespasser, 1 Glistening Deluge, 1 The Meat Hook Massacre, 1 Toxic Deluge, 1 Surgical Extraction, 1 Undercity Informer, and 1 Harbinger of the Seas. What do you like here against the Amulet Titan Menace?
Yeah, this is certainly an interesting sideboard, but like you see, the consigned to memories are going to have a shot. The thought seizes obviously
Yeah.
would be great here, and you maybe even bring in the surgical and go for the thought seize and amulet, surgical and amulet on turn 1. You are on the play. That is a line that sometimes just gets there. Definitely a lot of options. And the great news is if you're Jake, like we were mentioned, like I was saying, like your opponent kind of has to react to you. You can trim some of your aggressive stuff if you want, right? You can cut bowmasters and things like that, maybe even trim on unearths, or you can and go all reactive, or maybe go the other way. Maybe you just kind of, board out a couple easy ones, board in some thought seizes, and just say, I'm gonna put the pressure on them. Obviously, the Harbinger of the Seas, as you mentioned in the first game, very, very much on both players' minds as a mulligan.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's going to be very much what kind of the level 1 of this sideboard's about. I'll say this. I think I like any kind of surgical shenanigans a lot less in the face of, what is now the face up because they have open deck lists, like
Right.
Aftermath Analyst Pivot,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. I think that offers enough that kind of makes me not want to do that. Whereas previous versions, there's been opportunities where if you just thought he's Titan, Surgical Titan, maybe that's good enough. Thought he's Amulet, Surgical Amulet, they can't do anything. All these kinds of situations where, there's really only 4 cards in their deck that actually are real. The rest are just tutors and lands. Those have been cases in the past, but sometimes they have things like Field of Dead, or in this case, Aftermath Analyst, that offer, I think, enough reason to not necessarily reach for that. But I agree with you. I think Harbinger of the Seas is the level 1. How much counterspell, thought seize, do you want extra pressure in any kind of meaningful way? How much of that stuff comes up? Not clear. And I think part of the power of this Dimir Unearthed deck is you get that option. You get to decide what you want the game to be about, and especially, across 2 games. I mean, you're going to be able to really iterate on your own game plan, even if you lose here in game number 2.
Well, yeah, and you of course it may change between when you're on the play on the draw, but yeah, I mean, I have to say I like Jake's spot a lot here. The deck seems like it's going to be very well lined up. If you can just draw sort of an average hand. Now, I don't know, this deck's new. I don't know how often you just draw like 2 Abhorrent Oculuses and have mulligan to 5, right? So it's hard to say, but there's a lot of discard outlets and stuff for it. So it does seem hard for the deck to come up with like a real whiff of a hand, which leads me to believe that this is going to be one of those games where we might see Aftermath Analysts come into play, right? We might see those plan Bs, those plan Cs be where Amulet Titan is forced to go once Jake is run through a few counter spells and disruption spells.
Yeah, I'll say this. I played a lot of the Is It Murktide deck back in the day, and this Dimir version is obviously quite a bit different. And in a lot of ways that I think shore up what the Is It deck was weak against and weak at doing. I'm surprised there isn't more heat on this Dimir deck. I mean, like you just called out, this flexibility seems really powerful to me. I mean, having these Blood Moon effects, you get to do that in Mono Blue. Psychic Frog, an underrated card, I'd say, in Modern right now. I mean, it's running over Legacy. I mean, you'd think it would have a similar impact in Modern, and maybe it is, maybe it already is, but with all the heat kind of around the One Ring and the energy decks, I'm surprised there's more heat on this deck. This deck strikes me as really strong.
Yeah, and look, Abhorrent Oculus, I think it's definitely flown under the radar to this point. Obviously, it's only a month old or whatever, but I think this weekend is the first time I've seen the Abhorrent Oculus Unearth Frog pairing in action, and it looks really good, I have to say. Now, these Dimir decks, these Murktide decks in the past, they have been kind of exploitable. They just kind of flame out a lot of times, right? And they just turn into these sort of fine 50% decks. But I think that this having access to Thoughtseize in that changes a lot of just how your good and bad matchups are going to look.
Yeah. Like I said, you really short up. Like sometimes you're just too anemic and don't get enough pressure. Sometimes you don't have the right interaction. And like I said, Thoughtseize plus like the frog eyeball combo. Like I think that both of those things shore up kind of the holes in the Is It Murktide game. And even though you do lose Ragavan, this deck looks really good to me. And obviously Jake has to agree given the top 4 performance here. But I'm just saying I'm surprised we haven't seen more of this deck. Like it seems like something that not only would players like really gravitate towards, but also just seems very powerful. But maybe that changes today. Maybe Jake's gonna show everybody what's up.
Well, yeah,
Take
this
down the
is a breakout
and,
weekend, huh?
I don't think it's I think people have known about this. It's just what is the right build, and I mean I do think main deck Harbinger of the Seas is really a start to like turning up the heat on this deck. Like main deck Blood Moons in Modern have been a big game changer for a host of different decks, and there's something to be said for you're a deck that doesn't play the One Ring. That could be a major mistake in a lot of people's eyes, but I don't know. This deck looks good to me. Deck looks good to me. We'll see if Jake can take this one down. Up a game here in the semifinals. See a lot of counter magic in that hand.
Not a lot of land, I think, but maybe good. Maybe we got 2 over there. Good enough.
Got a couple.
In an island, yeah.
Couple and some interaction. Oh, but Cavern of Souls.
Good start.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't think you're counting Grizzer anyway necessarily, but I mean, it's still going to be a problem through the game because you can pick that one up, reset it on Giant, and then you're cooking. Is
right.
Hedge Maze the follow up? Great follow up as a land to put in. One that enters tapped anyway and gives you a little selection to the.
Well, yeah, you might say, well, gosh, you Cavern, that's great, but you had to name, whatever creature type the Grazer is. And you wasted it because it's the only way to make green mana. But no, you can just pick it up with one of your bounce lands and reset it later.
Yeah. And here we go. So we're starting with Watery Grave. No Surveil land here for Jake. Maybe Signal's Thoughtseize. Is that what we got? We sure do. Thoughtseize is going to look at a pile of lands, a Mystical Dispute, and a Primeval Titan. It's pretty clear 2 different paths you can go. I think if you have Harbinger of the Seas, maybe Mystical Dispute's worth taking. If not, the Primeval Titan looks like a problem that I'd want to solve. So we'll see what Jake does decide to take. Very much hand dependent what you want to take. And going to loudly signal, I think, to John, what exactly your plan is to win this game.
You can this, no matter what you choose here, it looks pretty good for Jake because if you don't have a Harbinger like this, you can strand the Mystical Dispute in their hand or let them counter a spell at some point. Who really cares? If you just take Titan out of the hand. Now, I just saw One Ring off the top.
One Ring, a great draw, especially post Thoughtseize. Can't Thougeize the top of the deck, and that one, the One Ring going to be a good.
And Jake doesn't know about it, right? So this is exactly 2 cards that Jake won't know about from John in between playing that Thoughtseize and John taking his 4th turn. And maybe there's a world where Jake doesn't tap out right here, if that's the case. Now, it's hard to really blame him. I think I spotted an Unearth in hand as well. Psychic Frog on 2, Thoughtseize on 1. This is everything you want, but the Mystical Dispute.
I think that Mystical Dispute, I mean, that's a tough one. I don't know if you had the Psychic Frog. That looked like the key opening, right? Going Thoughtseize into Psychic Frog. It's not like, I guess you're not drawing, right? That's your best draw out of the Dimir Unearth deck on average in this matchup. And, getting it tagged by Mystical Dispute is a tough thing to run into. And now you're going to have to go after the Spelunking that was drawn, pitching another frog.
Okay.
And the One Ring we know is the leftovers. Jake does not know that. I think that's going to be a big game changer for John. He's the top of the deck's been very kind to him since that Thoughtseize.
Yeah, this was a big moment, I think, because here we go. Unearth on the
we had the Unearth.
So this all makes sense, right? Running that into the Mystical Dispute just to bring it back makes sense. But for John, that Force of Negation going after the Spelunking means that the path is, I think, clear for the One Ring. But that was a big turning point that it was that Force of Negation was not saved. So here we go. The One Ring
got consigned. We do have consigned. Wow. Consigned the memory on time. And I think there's a counter spell as the leftovers. So
huge.
Some real good ones. Yeah. Block. Don't want to discard the cards, but the leftovers are good.
Huge play for Jake there because that One Ring would have absolutely swung things. Now I didn't actually clock. Oh gosh. I think
we drew another One Ring.
I saw another One Ring.
Counter spell. That one's getting eaten, but I mean, we're churning through these counter spells. You made Jake have a counter spell every turn. Here's the Fatal Push. It doesn't stop. Back and forth. Both of these players top decking well.
This is really fast magic. I like it. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. If it's a land off the top, John has Titan. That's the wrong
Oh,
land,
but
but that
bounce
land
land's a good
picks up.
one though.
Yeah,
Cavern.
that picks
Yeah.
up the cavern. He can reset the cavern now, like we mentioned. Name Giant, resolve that Titan next turn, no matter what, against Jake. And Jake's just got, I think, one card in hand, maybe two, with the Psychic Frog. This is very much winnable now for John.
Yeah, a
What
huge,
a game.
huge deal for John being, I mean, the top of the deck, like I said, has been very, very kind to him. But the same has been true for Jake. Some running counter spells, the fatal push to get your frog punching through, but the frog is still small. Really, Jake
Yeah.
needs to find a way to turn up the heat. I mean, this would be a timely abhorrent Oculus, I'd say, if we could find one. Thinking on the Undercity Sewers fetch. Very stocked graveyard. Graveyarded a card I can't get a good look at. It's looks like it costs 1 and has an alternate frame, so that's where I'm at so
draw
far.
a card on it. So
sure. Get a quick look at the necklace as the frog does continue to chug along. It's like a what a draw! Harbinger in the Seas? Come on!
John had the window. He had topped so well. Had it set up to play an uncounterable Primeval Titan on this turn. Now all of a sudden staring down at 4 islands.
Bunch of islands. So I got confirmation that is Thought Scour. I mean, it's basically between Thought Scour and Preordained. It appears that one is the Thought Scour, a little alternate art there that I'm not aware of, as the beatdowns continue for 3. And now the clock being anemic doesn't matter. We have found one of the Harbinger of the Seas. And I think, yeah, we're going to discard Thoughtseize to the frog to juice it up. No more black mana.
Yeah, it's
Jake
just time
does not have black.
It's just time to close this one out. And Murktide will certainly help with that. That Harbinger of the Seas just slamming the door shut on this semifinals match. And Jake knows, okay, I've done what I need to do. All I need to do now is put as much power onto the board as possible and end this game as soon as I can. That's a huge Murktide.
And yeah, now even if John finds a Dismember or something like that answers the Harbinger, there's so much pressure in play, and I just think it's going to be too much to overcome, as I believe every single land in play is currently just an island, and that's so tough. I mean,
some of them are non-basic.
So tough. Oh, yeah, I think they're all non-basic islands.
I think we got the one basic over on Jake's side, right? Looking
sure, yeah, which is also an island. So everything is just an island. It's all islands.
Oh man, really clean games by the Dimir deck. I really enjoyed the speed magic which these two played too. By the way, those
the top deck war there was crazy. Both players, I mean, just running heat off the top.
Yeah, that was like watching baseball with a pitch clock. You know, it's like, wow, this game can be so fast and high intensity. That was a really fun set of turns there by these two, treating us to a hell of a match here in the semifinals of our 10K Modern Showdown in Chicago.
Yeah, one of these players, Jake specifically, looking very good to punch his ticket to the finals and have an opportunity to, take down the victory, take down the trophy, take down the spoils, and find himself in the 2024 championship. As John can really only look on, try to figure out what his outs are. I see Summer's packed among the mix. I'll say this:
about here,
why do we print another Blood Moon? How did we look at Blood Moon gameplay and be like, we needed more of that?
It's a Merfolk.
You can
it wins games. It wins games. It wins matches.
Harbinger of the Seas does it again, twice in a row. So nice. We did it twice. And Jake Coenen, your first member of the finals on his version of the Tide, the Dimir Oculus deck. Frog Tide, whatever you want to call it, man. I don't know. It's got the blue and the black cards, and it wins with Harbinger of the Seas, I guess. I mean, an impressive showing, unironically. I mean, this, and that's what I said, like the level up of being able to include Harbinger of the Seas in the main deck really manifested there. I mean, the presence of that card in the main deck, I mean, allowed you to win a main deck game that maybe otherwise would have been pretty hard. But easily just was able to shut the door of the game and was able to do so again in game 2. It's not an easy card for Amulet to answer. They have to prepare for Blood Moon and this thing. A tough ask for Amulet Titan, but I mean, John did a great job, made it to the semifinals, and had a good performance overall, but unfortunately out of the running. But as always, magic doesn't stop there. We're going to cut down to our backup match. This appears to be live as these players are shuffling up for game number 3. Connor Malele, someone we've seen a lot on the NRG series, and today his take on Boros Energy, the lone energy deck still in the tournament, versus Grayson Nimitz playing a deck we've also seen quite a bit of today, this Belcher deck, this kind of blue Belcher strategy that we've seen supporting a bunch of Chameshis, all this counter magic and all this stuff,
Yeah.
and Goblin Charbelcher. Quite an interesting deck, I'll say, and certainly one of the best Lotus Bloom decks I've ever seen. And so starting with that card, a great start for Grayson. Just an elegant parlor for Connor is slow, but, there could be some powerful follow-ups.
Yeah, this might just be a 1, 2, 3, 4 game, though. I'm not going to lie. I spotted a Belcher in Grayson's hand. So if he can come up with a couple of lands here, this game might just end very quickly. So we've seen the energy decks have game even after starting slow, right? It's not always Ocelot Pride, a Johnny into double spell on turn 3, right? They can win the
Right.
longer games, but Belcher can win the shorter games, and Grayson seems to have just about everything he needs.
Yeah, Grace, a lot of things coming up, and we even have the Thunder Trap trainer.
There
Get
you
that
go.
card right. I'm not getting baited again. Using words are hard. Oh, okay. We got the White Orchid Phantom, and that one has to get Flare of Denial.
Wow,
Yeah,
okay,
can't
sure.
afford to get Stone Rained. I mean, that's a good way to change the math, and certainly explains why there's so many of those in Connor's sideboard. Can't find any basics or anything like that in your landless deck. That doesn't work.
It's actually a really nice piece if this is what it is actually for. 2 mana, 2/2 flying, first strike, when enters the battlefield, destroy a target non-basic land. Your opponent can get a basic. Well,
Yeah.
Belcher
Good
plays
luck.
one of those.
Let me know how that goes. Well, unfortunately, did have the counter spell, did Grayson, and getting the creature out of the way doesn't actually really matter that much for Grayson because no pressure in play.
Yeah.
Slow start for Connor. Have to imagine that Knight was part of the reason we kept the hand. Got an opportunity at another one, though, as here comes
I
Amp
think
the Raptor.
he's going to need it because this game's just over. Otherwise, Grayson has Whir for 0, which means he'll have Lotus
Static
Bloom
Prison
online and
is not
Charbelcher. I
it.
think we might be done here.
You're such a negative person here. What if
Well,
we gotta have some...
this Belcher deck, look, I am a fan.
You're about it. You're wide-eyed.
For 0, show him the
Oh,
Charbelcher. Go
goodness.
to the finals, Grayson.
Clean it up. I'll see you in the finals. Whir of Invention, an 8 artifact deck supporting Whir of Invention. A little odd, but yeah, you can do it for 0. Find yourself a Lotus Bloom. You found yourself a Black Lotus, and that's going to do a very good job of enabling your Goblin Charbelcher turns. Maybe I'll say maybe that's something we underrated in Modern through the years. Whir of Invention for 0 to find Lotus Bloom. That's powerful. I mean, that's a huge spike of mana.
Wargate, right? If you remember, like the card Wargate with land colors, a lot of times it would just grab lands when it wasn't grabbing something way better. And the floor for Whir of Invention is just ramping you at instant speed. That's not so bad.
Yeah, incredible. And especially for this deck, that won't always have their Lotus Blooms on suspend, getting basically 4 extra copies, a big deal. Or in this case, having a bunch of extra copies. We see kind of one of the bigger innovations that we've really seen in this tournament, the Tameshi.
Yes.
Available for Grayson in hand already. Don't think we need it. Have plenty of mana, but if the Charbelcher gets countered or whatever, could be a way to rebuy it. We saw that happen in the quarterfinals. So I think we're pretty well set up here as Connor's just kind of looking on.
Thinking it all through.
Gotta get a quick read. What does that one do again?
So just to clarify, what happens is if you flip lands till you hit a mountain or till you hit a land. You flipped it cards till you hit a land. It does damage. There you go. If the revealed land was a mountain, it deals double. If there is no land in your deck, it just kills you. It just deals all of it. So it, in fact, is usually enough for lethal. Connor's going to make him finish it off here, I guess. We're Tameshi flexing to make sure that nothing's going crazy, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really know what this is about.
Well, look, if you're Grayson and Connor doesn't scoop, you're thinking
maybe he has Angel's Grace. Yeah, I don't know what we're doing here.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's like fine, like whatever. How many extra seconds does it take to have a couple extra mana left over? And it did matter in the quarterfinals, right? Having that extra
mana
and stuff before.
Yeah, I mean, look at it this way: this is a high pressure situation. You get to practice your deck mechanics and make sure you understand how to play it because you have another big match coming up after this. And yeah, you mentioned that game earlier where we saw him play with Tameshi, and we thought, we started from thinking he doesn't have a win to he has the win. Oh, but it got countered too. Wait a minute, he still has a win. Because Tameshi just does ridiculous things. You're watching it here. You pay a white mana, you pick up the land, you put the Lotus Bloom back into play, you make 3 more mana, and you just end up with all this mana at the end here to activate a Charbelcher and win the game.
And that is what it looks like we're going to get around to doing once we're done activating Tameshi a bunch of times and picking things up and flipping cards around. That has got to be awful. All this flipping these cards back and forth looks Miserable. Just keep it on the land side or something. I don't. Do people yell at you do that? I saw some.
It's an egg deck. I'm telling you. I play against Tameshi, and people just play all these little rocks with it, all these lotus blooms, and it appeals to eggs players.
I should just put a second sunrise in my commander deck, and I had some residual trauma. That was a traumatizing moment for me. I was like, okay,
yeah,
we're doing this. We're doing reasonable. This. Okay, I guess we're doing this. Anyways, we finally got around to activating Goblin Charbelcher. Both players have read the card. Corbin has read the card. We have activated Charbelcher. All smiles here in the semifinals, and that's going to do it. Belcher over energy, an energyless final here in the modern 10K showdown. One of these players is going to punch their ticket to the end of the year championship at the last opportunity. Will it be Grayson or will it be Jake? We're going to find out here in just a moment. The stakes are very, very high, but I believe we're going to take a quick break while those players get set up. If you're watching this Magic, you're having a good time, you're enjoying reading Goblin Charbelcher with us, make sure you give us a follow, subscribe if you want no ads. I've seen some complaints about ads. It's a solvable problem, okay? And of course, goes and supports us, supports NRG and all the great work they do. And of course, check out season 1. You're going to get a look at that on the rolling slides while we're on break. Check it out. You can qualify maybe for the 2025 championship if you weren't able to make it out this weekend. We'll be back in just a moment with your finals.